Brady Adams is single and has a health insurance plan with the benefits shown in the figure. His recent network healthcare costs include co-payments for 7 physician visits and 8 specialist visits. Following hospital surgery, he made co-payments for 12 physical therapy visits, and he had 80 visits from a home healthcare nurse at $55 each. His hospital admission charge was $250, and his hospital bill was $15,098. What amount did he pay? So it's a simple question, right? What amount did he pay? So what were Brady Adams' total amounts paid for his healthcare costs? So amount paid by patient is just going to be equal to the sum or the total of all of these individual costs mentioned. And you can go grab the equation from your equation reference sheet. So amount paid by patient is equal to the deductible plus any co-payments. Now those co-payments are going to include visits from any of the specialists mentioned, so the doctor, specialist, the nurse, the physical therapist. All of these will incur co-payments. We'll also have insurance amount in our equation. And finally, any miscellaneous charges, including those hospital charges. Okay, so now we'll take it piece by piece and figure out the cost of each of these items. I'm going to start with co-payments because that one to me is the most involved and I like to tackle the harder ones first. So let's start by figuring out our cost of co-payments. Now, as I said, co-payments include those visits from the physician, the specialist, the physical therapist, and the nurses. So we need to find out the individual cost for each type of healthcare worker that saw this patient. Let's start with the physician. So we're told that Brady had 7 physician visits. And if I look at my table, I see that physician visits cost $15 a piece. So there were 17 at $15 a piece. So I multiply 7 by 15 to find out the total cost. Next, I'll look at those specialist visits. I see that there were 8 specialist visits. And if I look on my table, I see that specialist visits cost $30 a piece. So 8 at $30 a piece. Moving down the line, we get to a physical therapist. There were 12 physical therapy visits. I see that physical therapy visits cost $15 a piece for the first 15. Now, it doesn't matter what happens after that because we did not exceed 15 visits. We only did 12. So that's 12 visits at $15 a piece. All right, and finally we get to the nurses. So he had 80 visits from a home healthcare nurse at $55 each. So if we look on the table where it says home healthcare, we find that the first 50 visits are 100% covered. Meaning, if we consider our first 50 visits, which cost us $55 a piece, they're covered 100%. So I'm going to take 50 multiplied by 55 and I'm going to multiply by the percentage that I am paying. Well, I'm paying 0% of this. So 50 times 55 times 0 just ends up being 0. Now I have to do a similar thing to do my calculation for the last 30 visits. So again, there were 80 visits total. I just did the calculation for the cost of the first 50. Now I need to calculate the cost of the last 30. The reason I split it at 50 is just because in the table here, that's where the price point changes. So there were 30 additional visits, which were only covered at 80%. So 30 visits that cost $55 a piece were covered at 80%, meaning the patient pays 20%. So make sure that you're multiplying by the rate that you're paying or the patient is paying, not the rate that's covered. All right. So from here, to find the total for copayments, we just need to take our multiplications and simplify. So 7 times 15 plus 8 times 30 plus 12 times 15. This term cancels out. we'll add 30 times 55 times 0.20. Okay? Now at this point in the course, I trust you guys to be able to type this into the calculator correctly, and you'll find that the co-payments are equal to $855. Okay? Double check that in your calculator and make sure you come up with the same. So co-payments, we've found. Perfect. All right, what about, let's go to hospital charges. Our hospital charges include an admission charge. They say here his hospital admission charge was $250, and his hospital bill was $15,098. Now, don't get ahead of yourself, because we need to figure out how much of this is covered by insurance. So don't just go straight to adding this. Although it says that this was his hospital bill, it does not say that this is what he paid for the hospital bill. So if we look at hospital charges, you can see that we need to take, it's covered 80%, okay? Covered 80%, meaning we paid 20%. So again, we do our little trick where we multiply the bill by the percentage that we paid. We multiply the bill by the percentage that we paid. So that brings us to 250 plus 20% of 15,098 is 3,019.60, which gives us a total of $3,269.60 for our hospital charges. Okay. Now we're ready to revisit our original equation, which was amount paid by patient. So let's take a look. Amount paid by patient is equal to, let's take a look. Well, what is our deductible? That's the first thing we need here. What is our deductible? If we look at the table, it says the annual deductible for a single person is $275. So we start with $275. Next we add our co-payments, which we already calculated. Our co-payments were $855. No insurance amount was mentioned in this case, so there's no need to use that one. And finally, we add our hospital charges of $3,269.60. All right, so we take the total of those three numbers and we find that the amount paid by the patient was $4,399.60. So this is a long one and it was kind of tricky. Here's what to remember. Again, always start by keeping your eye on the prize. Ask yourself what you're solving for. Be careful as you go through the table. Make sure you double check each entry that you're taking. Even one minor slip, for example, if I had written down the physician visit amount wrong, it would have thrown off my whole answer. So double check as you copy information out of the table into your calculations. Then be on the lookout for variables that maybe don't apply. So in this case, we didn't have an insurance amount that we had to add on. So remember that you're going to have to fit the equation to each individual question you're answering, and each question you answer won't be the same and the setup won't look identical.